Is the recording on?
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to the May meeting of the East Lothian Integration Joint Board. I'll hand over to Fiona to do the logistics first.
Thank you. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available as a webcast in order to allow the public access to the democratic process in East Lothian. East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian are data controllers under the Data Protection Act 2018, and data collected as part of the recording will be retained in accordance with the Council and Health Board's policies on record retention. The webcast of the meeting will be publicly available on the website for up to 5 years. I'll now cover apologies and the roll call. I have apologies from John Hardman. I don't have any other apologies unless anyone knows differently. No? Okay, I'll proceed to the roll call. Shameen Akhtar.
Present.
Liz Allen.
Present.
Jeremy Finlay.
Present.
Carol McFarlane.
Present.
Jonathan Blaseby.
Present.
Patricia Cantley.
Present.
Andrew Cogan.
Present.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Present.
Maureen Allen.
Present.
David Binney.
Present.
Darren Bradley. Lindsay Byrne. Sarah Gosner.
Present.
David Hood.
Present.
Kalonde Casangeli will join the meeting later. Claire MacDonald. Claire McIntosh. Liam Kerr. Mike Porteous.
Present.
And is Fiona present or is she on holiday today?
Fiona sends her apologies today. She's on holiday this week.
Thanks. And I believe we will also have Dr. James Blair as an observer today.
Present.
Shameen, apologies. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just I should have mentioned earlier apologies from Lindsay Byrne and from Darren. I spoke to Darren yesterday, so I should have mentioned that. So
and do any members have any declarations of interest? No, that's great. Thank you. That's ready to start the business, Chair.
Thanks, Fiona. Can I first start by welcoming James? James, you're not on my screen at the moment, so I can't see you, but I'll just plop on, and I did see you join. So just as introduction to other colleagues, James was appointed as our service user representative a few weeks ago. I think we've still got to bring a paper here to get it formally endorsed, but we thought if James was available for him to come and observe the meeting today. So on behalf of us all, James, very, very welcome. I won't try and go around a screen, a Teams to do introductions, but when you come to your first development meeting and we're in person, we'll do the formalities. James, do you want to just say one couple of words about yourself and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Andrew. Just to say hello, Dr. James Blair. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Service user representative. I live in East Linton, in the county. I also work in Mid Lothian as well. So that's just a little bit about me.
Excellent, James. Thank you. You will get to know us and we will get to know you over the course of your tenures, but you are very, very welcome and please contribute to the meeting as you see fit. Your input will be most welcome. Okay, so we'll go on to the formal business now. We have some minutes of our meeting held on the 29th of March. I've noted a couple of matters arising that I want to update at the end of this on voting rights. So we'll kind of do that as part of Chair's report and matters arising. But let's just do the minutes first. So any matters of factual accuracy or typos and things, then just let Fiona know. So I'm going to go through to highlight any issues that people want to raise as matters arising. So page 1. And then page 2. Shameen?
just on page 2, Andrew, under section 2, entitlement to breaks for carers, I know that the Health and Social Care Partnership have put a submission to Scottish Government. I just wanted to ensure that there's a mechanism for ourselves as an IGIB to be kept updated on this, because it came up at the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities of their response to Scottish Government. So I think it's a really important issue, because it does impact on our finances, and we do support the entitlement for carers to have a break. It's how we manage that resource and expectation. So it's just to find a way of making sure we keep this on the agenda for future meetings, so we're kept updated on the finances and its implementation.
Thanks, Shemeen. David, do you want to, or Laura, do you want to briefly respond?
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, the HSCP along with the council made a response, as did Adult Social Work, as two separate responses. So the Carers Board made a response, Adult Social Work made a response. Obviously the IJB were asked to respond but weren't able to, so there wasn't a response from the IJB. However, the carers strategy and the update is coming to the next SPG and then the next IJB, and I would expect any information that we get back via that carers programme board to continually feed up to the IJB, and that should be the mechanism by which we get any updates. But it was very well responded, both sessions, so I was pleased about that.
Thanks, Laura. And you're right, Shemeen, we need to keep this on our focus, and I think the next IJB meeting, with having it on the agenda, that will do so. Shemeen, come back.
Yeah, just to say, on the at the COSLA meeting, staff shared the response to Scottish Government, and I agreed with everything in there. And I think probably all IJB members would have agreed with the key issues and the premise of the report.
David, anything from your perspective to add?
Merely to say that yes, we should be concerned about the financing of it and the legal obligation that it places upon us. So yes, we need to observe developments as they move forward, and we need to be proactive in seeking to expand the capacity of the third sector to be able to respond to the requirement for providing breaks. It's a two-way thing. We need to support carers in applying, getting the support that they're entitled to, but we also need to stimulate the market to provide the provision. Otherwise, the match will not be made.
Thank you, David. Wise words. Yes. I will move on then. Anything else on page 2, Shemeen?
Andrew, just on page 2, just below entitlement to break for carers, the weight management medicines, and we had Miss Ailes who came along and presented the report. We gave her quite a lot of feedback, which she said she would relay on to Scottish Government. So it was just to find out if there was any feedback from there as a result of some of the issues that we'd raised. If there was any response on that would be helpful to know.
I've not seen that loop closed as yet. David, have we seen anything?
No, not from my perspective. Haven't seen anything from that. So we can pick it up with Laurie just to see if there has been any feedback in terms of that. I'll pick that up with Laurie.
I know there was awaiting the outcome of a application that was being made to a funding body, so maybe include an update in that as well, David, when you get a response.
Okay, will do.
Okay. Anything further on page 2? I'm seeing no hands. We'll move to page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Oh, Shemeen, 7 or 8?
7, please. Just at the bottom of page 7, we had a discussion at the last meeting around ancestral care resources, and I think there was an issue around some of them are recurring, some of them are non-recurring, and if any of them were to stop, what might happen. I know that NHS Lothian had indicated that it would mitigate against the risk of funding not recurring due to the concerns from the IGIB. It was just to keep an eye on that, because I know it's quite significant levels of resource, and I know that that's been used for care at home, for example, which is a really valued service that we require that's part of the delayed discharge. So it was just a way of keeping an eye on those resources, and maybe that might be covered in finances, but just as an IGIB of what was coming through the door, and we're clear about what's recurring and what's not recurring.
Mike, do you want to briefly comment? I know you will include anything that's pertinent in regular finance updates, but
yes, can do. That was referring to the core funding of 2.6 million, which we got, which we applied for and got as our share of Lothian. So that's right. NHS Lothian has undertaken to sort of underpin that going forward. There were other non-recurring elements of funding that came from the Scottish Government last year, and we don't know at this stage if those will be recurring again or if they were one-offs. So there is still some uncertainty around all this, but the core 2.6 million that we've invested in scheduled care services over the last year and a bit, we expect to continue with.
Okay, thank
Sinead, did you want to come back on that?
No, that's helpful to know. I think just keeping an eye on what's not recurring.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking now at page 8. And page 9. And page 10. And page 11. Shameen, 10 or 11?
Yeah, just number 10, please. Just at the second paragraph, we had quite a lot of discussion around set aside, and I think there was a suggestion made of asking Michelle Carr and Nick Bradley could deliver a session around financial processes, and I thought I would just make sure that was picked up as part of the action log.
I think that's in the programme for development session rather than here. David, am I correct on that?
Yeah, so I think we'll pick that up through a development session, and we can make sure that Michelle and Nick are invited to come along.
That's great, thank you.
Okay. I'm seeing no further hands. So I will take it with those issues that Shamim has raised are noted, and we'll accept them as an accurate record of the meeting. There are a number of items on the action log. The first one being around the annual delivery plan and performance framework, and that's on the, or part of that's on the agenda today, and Claire's going to take us through that. A couple of items there have been closed with your agreement, and there's one there around positive recognition for partnership collaborative works with communities highlighted in the report under the value for money side of things, that I think that's a one for Mike to keep his eye on. I have no further matters arising or actions from the last meeting. I'm seeing no more hands, so we'll again formally record that as an accurate record, etc. Okay. In terms of the chair's report, I've just got a couple of things to go through. The first one is we've had recently 2, I thought, very interesting, informative and very helpful development sessions. There has been good attendance at those, and we have a third one coming up in June. Just to thank the contributors to that, and thanks for people. They really do add to particularly the voting members' understanding of the health system in which we operate within. So thanks for colleagues for that, and a reminder that there's a further one coming up in June. So that was good. The next one is around voting rights for the current non-voting members. There is a meeting taking place as we speak today between the chair and vice chair of IJB's network and Scottish Government, and that is part of the process of this short life working group from Scottish Government, who are working through the implications of this. A set of very draft, they are draft guidance has been issued. They are not confirmed as yet. And part of the conversations today is to further examine those draft guidelines. Just to recap, the legislation has been changed and comes into effect from September. The Short Life Working Group, which has representatives from a whole host of organisations, are working through the practical implications of that. The first draft guidance has been shared for discussion within the Short Life Working Group. It's been shared with some people as well. And as soon as we get any confirmation that that draft guidance becomes formal guidance, then we will share that with IJB. I've given Laura and Fiona and David a heads up on that, because if that draft guidance is accepted, there will be a fair amount of work to do within the IJB. But we can't enact that, yes, because it's draft and it's not agreed. So, but there's a heads up in the system. Essentially what is being proposed in the draft is not a once for Scotland process. It is being proposed that each individual IJB will enact its own arrangements, and that has some merits and some disadvantages, and they are being discussed part of that meeting as we speak. So, but it is September is not a very long way away, and the legislation is enacted, and we are still awaiting formal guidance. And I hesitate as an IJB to run ahead of that guidance. I think it is important that we wait. So I'll pause there and just say, David Binney, have you heard anything further on that?
I would say interesting times, and I think many different bodies are lobbying their opinions on the draft. And personally, I think there are probably more flaws in going for local autonomy than there are in going for a national model. And I think there could be further angst ahead for some IJBs, which are not as well placed and established as our own.
Again, as always, David, wise words. I think that is the feedback that's being made by a number of people. Laura, before I come to you, I'll ask James to come in. Have you any input, James, to that?
Yeah, I suppose I agree with David's comments there. I think from a service user point of view, if the model is accepted the way that they're negotiating at the moment, to look at co-producing whatever the outcome is for East Lothian, to make sure that we are consulted as well to see feasibility. So if that could be considered going forward, that would be really helpful.
Yes, absolutely, James, thank you. And before I come to you, Maureen, have you heard anything through your networks?
Just that nationally we're getting represented in that group. I'm just keeping my eye on it, but there's nothing gossipy about it yet.
Okay. Laura?
I suppose it was just to echo that whatever the outcome, I think there can be no doubt that the pressure for us to support it, so the resources required by the IJB to support rightly the additional voting members, is going to be significant, as you said, Andrew. And I think it's just maybe having that in the back of our minds, that to do it properly and to do it well is going to require additional resources of the HSEP, in fact. So just, I'm very conscious of that. The easiest bit is changing the scheme for integration. The hardest bit is supporting it properly and it not being tokenistic. So just mindful of that.
Again, wise words, Laura, thank you. I think there will be work taking place, obviously, between IJB meetings and other formal committees. And if we get anything that is appropriate to share in terms of formal guidance, then we will issue that to members of the IJB. And I think it will be incumbent upon, I think the responsibility for changing anything will sit with Fiona and officers. So we'll keep an eye on this and share information as it becomes available. But there's not a long time between now and the 1st of September to do some of these things, and I would rather we do it properly and correctly and right, rather than rush into something. So we'll see how we square that circle over the next few weeks and months. Shamin?
Yeah, one thing I suppose for us to think about is what kind of supports and training program we might want to put in place, and who might be involved in that if this is going to be beyond September, and just have a be thinking some kind of a comprehensive induction support, and people that are on the IJB might want to, whether yourself, Laura, or yourself, Jennifer, maybe just give feedback as to what might be valuable things to do, and maybe parts of the HSEP to make themselves familiar with.
Thanks, Shameen. The only other thing I was going to raise under the chair's report is just to acknowledge that there was an election a few weeks ago, been between our last IJB meeting and this meeting. We have a new government. That new government has a new cabinet, and there are new roles and new cabinet secretaries within that organisation. And there is a significant new post at CabSec level for the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service Reform. I would advocate that colleagues look at their previous briefings and dig out the public service reform strategy that came out back end of last year, early this year. And I think Fiona Curry will send another copy round. I think with the prominence being placed upon that, it will be incumbent upon IJBs and all public service organisations to not better understand, but to have a reread of what's in that strategy document, as it might give some indication as to current and new Scottish Government thinking. The positive thing is that the first pillar of that is about prevention. So I think it highlights rightly the focus that many of us around this call have, but I don't think it would do any harm to think through that. My understanding as well is there will be a new programme for government. I think it's likely to come out after the summer recess, is my understanding, but I stand to be corrected on that, and I think we will all be waiting for that and looking at what its implications are likely to be. So we'll keep an eye on that and share it with colleagues appropriately. Maureen.
Just a quick comment, Andrew. Obviously it's public service, not public services reform, so that we all have a part to play in this. That includes the third sector and the communities. So it's all about sharing the burden again. So I'm pleased.
I did read the document the other day, and the third sector wasn't as prominent as one would have hoped it should be. I'm sure you've already made that correlation, Maureen.
Well,
yes,
you
but the principles are there. So and I think if we hear anything in advance of any future IJB meeting on the programme for government, then we will share with colleagues appropriately. I had no other issues from mine. Shameen, anything from your vice chair role to share with colleagues?
Just to mention, last week there was a meeting of the COSLA Health and Social Care Board. So the Rights for Carers breaks, that came up, and there was general consensus around what we've talked about. And the other issue which I raised was the issue of non-residential care charging. At the last term of Parliament, that was one of the areas where it was in the manifesto to have that removed. So I did want to find out what does that mean. So what COSLA will do is make contact with the new Cabinet Secretary, Angela Constance, to find out where that sits now. And our position remains the same, that we wanted them to be removed. So we'll get feedback from them, because we have a non-residential social care charging group, and that's one of the things that they ask me of what's happening kind of on kind of government level wise. So that was raised. And just one other final thing I wanted just to flag up, that one of the Crookston Care Home, they've had their 9th inspection. So 9 consecutive years they've had a very good inspection for their standards. So that's an outstanding achievement to be able to do that for 9 years running. So I just wanted to flag that up as one of the services in East Lothian of the good work that's happening there.
Right, thank you for that, Shameen. That ends that item. Let's move on to the substantive business. Agenda item 4. I'm going to hand over to Claire for an update, well, not update, a significant paper on the annual delivery plan.
I'll take that. Claire's not here today. It's okay.
Sorry, Laura.
No, sorry, I should have updated the agenda. So this is the presentation of the annual delivery plan to the IJB for noting. This is the document that works alongside the strategic plan that you agreed a few months ago, and is the kind of how we're going to deliver the strategic plan this year in 26-27. So just to note that the IJB will also receive a year-end update regarding the delivery of the 26-27 ADP and then a new ADP in May 2027. However, during that time, you'll obviously receive performance information to allow you to see how we are achieving the objectives within the strategic plan. You'll be aware, or many of you will be aware, that the performance framework is under development, and we will bring that back to the IJB after the summer recess, when further work has been done on it. So really just to take any questions regarding the ADP. It has been discussed at the strategic planning group already, and we have added the addition of the programme boards onto there, so you can see which area or how each area is going to be taken forward or by whom. There is a subsequent paper coming to the next IJB on directions, and those equally all feed into the work of the strategic plan, the ADP, the performance, and equally our programme boards. To let you know that each of our service areas are creating their service plans for this year, and they will be completed at the end of June, and they will mirror what you see in that annual delivery plan. So you can hopefully start to see how it all is coming together with all the various documents that we have and why we have them. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Let's open it up to any questions, comments, observations. I am seeing two hands. Shameen first.
Yeah, well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Laura, for presenting that. It was just more of a just to get a reassurance as part of being an integrated body. Just it does mention housing in some sections. It's just to get a reassurance that there's that housing are involved, that there's a partnership with housing. And also on page 27, I'm pleased to see that development of a local compact, but it says on hold pending a progress at a national level. I'm just wondering, is there something happening at a national level that's means that we can't do this, or can we just go ahead and do our own compact in East Lothian? And then just finally around this report and also in the finance report, there's mention of staffing and workforce. And I just wondered, I know that we've got a workforce strategy, but will there be any areas that are fed back at the same time as this? Because that's kind of underpins a lot of this, and it underpins, our finances as well.
All right, want to come back?
Yeah, so just to confirm, so there's a housing delivery group that reports into the Community Health and Social Care Programme Board, and as per your request at Cabinet, we will bring the action plan or delivery plan for that group, I think, to the next SPG for agreement. It's already been agreed at the programme board and at the housing partner board. So yeah, we continue to work well in partnership with our housing colleagues, and that I think has really developed over the last couple of years, and we're seeing some really positive outturns, so that's good. And the compact agreement, I'm going to ask Maureen to come in on, because there is work going on nationally, and I think we had agreed that there was we wanted to wait until further work was done. Maureen, can you help me out here?
Yes, yes, I can. Basically, we're trying to bring ourselves in line with England and what the English government did with their compacts or their covenant. So we thought it would be best to wait and see what happens with Scottish government rather than reinventing the wheel, because it'll cover all third sector organisations and charities as well. So, I mean, I'm happy to progress it. I just think that given everybody's capacity just now, if something's happening nationally, we should wait and see what happens there first.
And then just in relation, thanks, Maureen. And then just, I wasn't quite sure of your question. There's a workforce strategy that will obviously report in as well. I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, just that a lot of this work, a lot of this work will underpin having our workforce, and I know that will there be some kind of coordination of when we're feeding back on this, that we'll get feedback on the workforce strategy as well, because a lot of this will underpins whether staff capacity and the skills base, etc. And we know from the finance report there's underspends, and that was based around recruitment and staffing.
Yeah, so certainly we will update on the workforce plan, and I suppose any update and any relation to performance reporting that we will do through this, and we will highlight where we have staffing issues and therefore bits of work can't be taken forward, or we need to focus one area rather than the other. So yeah, I see all the kind of as we always say, all the documents kind of interlinking, and this both the strategic plan and the workforce plan were developed together and have kind of link with each other. So yeah, I would expect you to be able to see that through the performance reporting.
That's
Elizabeth.
Thanks. Thanks, Laura. Just wanted to ask a quick question about the work on digital transformation. It looks like quite ambitious plans, which is great to see. I just wanted to ask about digital exclusion, with reference made to ensuring integrated assessments are carried out to make sure that there's mitigates any risk of that. How are we going to tap into the knowledge of the people who are most likely to be affected by digital exclusion, to make sure that we fully understand this? Thanks.
Yeah, so that's come from our engagement lead, Kate, who did a piece of work looking at particularly around digital exclusion and how the work that we're doing, how can we ensure that we're not excluding people who are not digitally literate or do not want to be. So Kate's been working hard on that, has done a piece of work and has fed back, and there's a kind of report that I forwarded on to actually the council just to let them have sight of it as well. So that's how we are getting that information. How we're addressing it, I'm not too sure, and I don't think we've decided on that, or I don't think we know yet. I think the digital agenda is ambitious, and I'm pleased it is. I think we are struggling to deliver on it, partly going back to Shemeen's point, the resources that we have, and partly because we're so held by our partner organisations and their level of engagement or ability to transform some of the way their digital or IT solutions are being delivered. So I think we get frustrated in the HSCP. We've kind of got big ideas, but they're very hard to gather the momentum and get them delivered because of the complexity of the digital agenda and working, like I say, with both partners. So I don't know how we will address digital exclusion, but I am confident that the work that Kate is doing is really highlighting that, and also making sure that we're aware of that through our integrated impact assessments when we're doing those pieces of work.
Thanks.
James.
So it was just in response to looking at the lived experience and digital exclusion, which is quite a common theme, I think, in local authorities and health services. I take it that's Kate Thornback. Is it possible to have sight of the report, or is there anything I can support in terms of that real world impact? Because I think it sounds like you're getting a bit of a struggle to get that input in terms of what that digital divide is and the shape of that, and the lived experience that goes with the sort of evolution of services in towards a direction. But there will always be sections of the population that just will not do the digital conversion, and so it's what other sort of practices we can put in place, and whether that's fair and proportionate as well. So I'm happy to support that exercise if that would help, because I think doing it right will actually save the organisation resourcing as well, but also if we can get digital support correct, it can ensure that people are not left behind.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely, James, and I know you're well linked in with Kate anyway, but I can certainly see if the report could be shared with the IJB for information. It was a kind of community engagement piece that she did, and I thought was very good. So yeah, I will tell Kate to get back in touch with you, James. I'm sure you're in touch anyway, and I will double check about the report coming to the IJB.
I think digital exclusion and discrimination around digital is a real issue. At the NHS Lothian board or one of the meetings, it was that the new NHS app is going to use .gov.scot as its entry to using the NHS app, which excludes anyone who doesn't have a smartphone or an email address, and therefore in that simple world there of using the Once for Scotland NHS app, we've excluded a significant proportion of the population, and that's very understood. But there's much more mitigation and much more work needed to manage that. So I think it's a common factor across all sectors at the moment. Shameen.
Yeah, it's just kind of picking up on that around just being joining up on all the dots, because there's quite a lot of mention about community-based services and how just to get a reassurance that there's joined up with community and partnerships. And I can see that Eamon John's in the meeting today who covers communities and partnerships and libraries, etc., and how we're joined up. So we're looking at not just our own NHS services, but we're looking out with the NHS of how we're supporting communities around their health and well-being.
Thanks, Shameen. In terms of the annual delivery plan, I read it several times now at different committees. We have a 5-year strategy. It was agreed. It's comprehensive. It was quite ambitious. We now have the actions that we will be undertaking in the first year to deliver against that strategy. And underpinning that, there's a performance framework that will give us the data to see the impact of the work that we are doing against the measurables that we want to see. That's yet to be finalized. But once that comes, that then is our role will be to check and assess our progress as an IJB through our work programs, that we are delivering the aims and delivering the work of our strategy. And it feels pretty comprehensive to me. And we'll revisit this for the final time once we get the performance framework. But I think we have the majority of the pieces of the jigsaw in place. I'm very keen, and I know others are, that we see the impact of the work on the data and the measurables and the outcomes that will show that our strategy has been successful. And we're 3 months into a 5-year strategy, so I think this is good progress. But the performance framework and the data is very important. So, Eamon, to comment.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew, and thanks, Shameen, for leading in respect of that joined up with the communities. Andrew, most definitely, and Laura and David, we were at the CLT yesterday, 3 months into a 5-year strategy, and obviously we're joint partners in what is the East Lothian Community Planning Partnership and the LOIP, and one of the key themes, of course, is living well. And Maureen's on the call as well. So I think it'll be really important, Shameen, colleagues, around how we're not absolutely, running in 2 separate lanes. We're able to get our data and our reporting and our monitoring so we can co-produce and achieve more together. And I think that'll be a much clearer picture for our community as well, if we're able to be saying the same thing about what we're doing in these important spaces. So I think they will complement each other very clearly, the LOIP and the plan here. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I'm seeing no more hands. Paper is for noting. This is work in progress. So I'm content that we note it. And thank you, Laura, and thanks to Claire in her absence for the work that is continuing to be put in to develop this. So thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item 5, 6, and 7, which are all, I think, with Mike's name against them. So first one, Mike, the risk management policy and strategy.
Thank you, Andrew. So the purpose of this paper is to report, or the purpose of this report is for the IJB to note the revised risk management policy and strategy that was approved by the Audit and Risk Committee at its March 2026 meeting. So this is for noting. So as a bit of background, the IJB's risk management policy and strategy were last updated in 2022. So they were obviously well overdue for renewal and revisiting. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the new policy. In terms of pulling it all together, I undertook some benchmarking and I had a good look around at what other IGBs were presenting. And I do feel that the revised document is more up to date in its content and presentation of what a good risk management policy and strategy should be. I just wanted to highlight the main changes that this document has. Firstly, we moved from having two separate documents into one. So we've pulled both those documents together and made it into one document. So I think it flows much better than it did before. And the structure and presentation of the content of the document is, I think, clearer and sets out in a clear way, first of all, the policy. So our approach to risk management, how the policy is implemented, i.e. the strategy. It's got sections on accountability, roles and responsibilities of people within that, sections on resourcing and training, and also how we monitor and measure performance. And also how we will ensure risk management is communicated across the health and social care partnership. So essentially, it's got a framework in there that we can follow going forward. As I say, it was approved by the Audit and Risk Committee. The only thing that we did agree to do was to undertake a review of the risk matrix that supports our risk register and was part of the policy, just to make sure that everybody understands it and we've got the right splits in there in terms of how we're assessing things. But happy to take any comments if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Elizabeth, anything to add as chair of the Audit and Risk Committee?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike, for that. Yeah, the Audit and Risk Committee had a good look at this back in March, and we agree with Mike that it's now very clear. We thought it flows well and it's easy. I think it's very accessible, easy for anyone who picks it up to understand, which is obviously important. I think probably just in terms of things to draw out, if someone was going to dive in to have a look at it, I would say, for example, number 1.5 is really important, explaining about risk appetite or tolerance, which I think is quite important for IGB members to understand. For example, a high risk may be tolerable provided the IGB is assured regarding adequacy and effectiveness of controls, but very high risk or critical risk would be unacceptable. So I would draw everyone's attention to that. The document obviously makes it really clear that good risk management should be across all IGB activities and embedded in all decision making. So I think that's just something that everyone needs to remember. Yeah, I think we're all happy with it. So yeah, just fully support that. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Open it up to any further comments, questions, observations. I'm seeing no hands. So Mike, Elizabeth, it's been through audit and risk, so we are here just to note it, and a good piece of work, and thank you for that. So it's duly noted. So we move on to agenda item 6. Also in the world of risk and audit, the Audit Committee's annual report. Mike.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, I'm pleased to bring the first Audit and Risk Committee annual report to the IGB. The Audit and Risk Committee is normally referred to as ARC, so that's how I will refer to it throughout this presentation. It's fair to say there's been some requests for a better understanding of the ARC business in recent times. Good governance dictates that we should be feeding back on that performance and to the IGB. And when I looked at the terms of reference for the ARC committee, it states that it's expected to report to the IGB on a regular basis on the committee's performance. So as I say, I think this report's probably long overdue. Just to be clear, the IGB delegates some of its role and responsibilities to the ARC, and these are set out in the terms of reference. This report provides a summary of the ARC terms of reference, and the full terms of reference are attached as an appendix, so people can read them at their leisure. The report itself goes on to report on the ARC business undertaken at the quarterly meetings during 25-26, and it does that under 4 key headings. It's internal audit, external audit, risk in terms of the risk register, and any other business. So these are the 4 headings that make up this report. I'll just go through each one briefly. In terms of internal audit, the report summarises the work of the internal audit function in presenting and delivering on its annual report. The annual report is approved by the ARC committee usually at its March meeting, and it also talks about the outcomes of the audits undertaken. It highlights work of the annual involved in the annual governance statement, and you also see that ARC is made aware of any internal audit reports undertaken by our partners that impact on the assurance that the IGB can take from our partners' work. So it's a fairly comprehensive piece of work in terms of what the internal audit do. The internal audit plan, as I say, was agreed for 2026-27 at our March meeting, and there are 2 audits on that internal audit plan. At that meeting, it's worth pointing out that the chair requested a table listed all previous internal audits done, and one of the members also requested that we highlight the ones that have a limited assurance. These audits are done on a sort of cyclical basis, so it was a good request to have that all laid out in a table so that we can see which ones have been done and when they've been done and when we might expect to see them updated. In terms of the external audit work highlighted in the report, that section focuses on the work of the external auditors, which is mainly on the annual audit plan and on the annual accounts, and their role in producing the audit plan, which again has to be approved by the ARC, in undertaking and completing the audit work that they do on their annual accounts within the timescale set out, and reporting back on their findings. But external audit also have a presence at the all ARC meetings as well, and they're able to contribute to the business as and when required. The next bit of the report talks about the risk register work that we undertake every quarter. So this involves a review of the risk register at every ARC meeting and discussion around the risks that are on that risk register. There's a summary of the latest risk register or a copy of a summarised version of the latest risk register was provided as an appendix to the paper, and it's proposed that at the moment that we're looking to review and revise the way that summary is set out so that we have a more comprehensive and informative way of presenting our risks at each of the meetings, which might help us to have a more informed debate around each of those. So that work is underway, and at our June meeting we will look at an alternative way of setting out the risk register work and how we review it. The last bit of the report just touches on the main other business that the ARC undertook last year, and that was interestingly one of the key aspects of that was the work on approving the risk management policy and strategy, which you've just seen. The ARC chair and myself have worked together to pull this report together, and it is the first one, so I would be interested to hear any feedback that people have in terms of the content and structure of the report, and happy to try and answer any questions that people have.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Elizabeth, do you want to come in at the end or come in now? It's up to you as audit chair.
Happy to come in now, and if anyone has got anything else to ask at the end. I think it's just I think when you start in the IGB and you don't really fully understand what audit is, it can seem quite inaccessible. So I'm hoping that this report will help break it down to understand that the internal audit function is delivered. Duncan Steinbank, who works for the council as chief internal auditor, that provides internal audit function helped with by NHS Lothian. And then obviously we've got our external audit function as well, as Mike had said. I think the meetings that we have are I feel they're well run, that with the auditor, internal and external auditors are supportive, answering our questions if needed. So I feel like that the work of the committee has been good this year. I think we're working constructively to try to make things even better, as Mike has alluded to. So I'm pleased about that. Pleased that we're working towards a sort of new iteration of the risk register, and hopefully that will be finalised at the June meeting. So yeah, I'm just to say thank you to Mike and the audit, internal and external, and all members of the committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think this closes the loop, doesn't it? As you both said, of this is the work of the Audit and Risk Committee, and this is the report back to the IJB. We do see other reports and the internal audit things, but this is closing that very, very important loop. And from my point of view, good report and good to see. But we'll open it up to any other comments, questions, observations. Shameen.
Yeah, no, just echo the comments Elizabeth has made, but one of the things we did discuss, and we'll see, Mike, later on in your report, around what our projected pressures are likely to be as we move forward, that table in the next finance paper. So we did discuss around the demographic pressures and being able to fully understand as an IJB what they were and where they were coming from, and the kind of things that we need to look at. So we're kind of reassured of the financial projections, that they're as robust and as accurate as possible, but also then enabling us to look at alternative different ways of supporting people when we're looking at how we meet their needs in the local community. So I think that would be a helpful thing to do.
Thanks, Shameen. And you can pick some of those issues up, Mike, in your report if you need to for the next item. I'm seeing no further hands, so we duly note the report, Mike. Thank you. I'm looking at the clock and it's 14:52 and we have one more item. This could be a record for an IJB meeting. However, it is a finance paper we're looking at next, so we'll see whether. So no pressure on you, Mike. Then but over to you. So finance report.
Yeah, Andrew. So the purpose of this report is to update the IJB on the final financial position for the year end 25-26, to acknowledge the implications of this on the IJB reserves and the recommendation to establish an earmarked reserve for care at home, to recommend the acceptance of the updated East Lothian Council funding offer and the final NHS Lothian funding offers for 26-27, and to note the latest version of the medium-term financial plan. The first section of the report notes the final year-end position, and the table 1 shows how we got there. The forecast overspend on health delegated services increased to just over 2 million, 2.087 million. It was forecast at 1.8 million at Q3. And that overspend relates to, within core services, pressures within GMS, General Medical Services, and prescribing, which we've highlighted in previous reports. There's a small overspend in the hosted mental health service, again, pressures that have been highlighted previously, and overspend across several set-aside services that make up that 2 million overspend. Break even on the health delegated services was achieved through an additional allocation from NHS Lothian, and that was based on the fact that NHS Lothian itself underspent for 25-26. In terms of the council delegated services, we reported an underspend of 1.459 million for the year. The previous IJB reports have applied an element of prudence to the anticipated position to allow for unexpected adverse movements, and have forecast break-even at the year end. So the position moved in terms of its Q3 to Q4 position by 1.1 million in the final quarter, which took it to 1.549 million. So this enables the IJB to create a general reserve and report a break-even position against its health delegated services. We'll discuss the general reserve or impact on reserves later on in the paper. In terms of the council delegated position and the underspend, The Chief Officer, myself and the Head of Operations, have met with the Council Finance colleagues, and we've got a better understanding of the multifactorial drivers of the year-end position. So the main drivers sat within staffing. We had an underspend on staffing around vacancies and recruitment challenges. There was a reduction in the overspend within commission services and an increase in the income side of things. There was also a release of earmarked carers reserves into the position as well. So our discussion enabled us to identify potential opportunities within that to maybe look at ways in which we could report slightly differently around the staffing side of things, incorporating trends and so on to try and give us a bit more accuracy going forward. We have asked for a detailed breakdown of the underspend and the movements to help us to assess if there are any further opportunities to mitigate such movements in the future. And we've also asked for the implications in terms of full year spend or full year effect of these movements in 2025-26. So what impact might they have on our 26-27 position? In terms of moving on within the report, the next section of my report provides the year-end position on the delivery of efficiencies. So overall, we're reporting an under delivery of 353,053 million in year and 0.756 million recurringly. Most of that sitting within the health schemes. So a number of the health schemes have under delivered and some did not deliver at all. So we need to have a review of those. Those were offset by some over delivery in a couple of schemes, but still a significant under delivery overall. And two council schemes also under delivered in year. That was largely as a result of residual site costs within two of the sites that we closed. It's important that we deliver these efficiencies on a recurring basis, because if we don't, then any under delivery on a recurring basis will impact on our future year gaps in terms of our financial position. But just to conclude on the efficiency side, we will review all the schemes that under delivered to see if they're still viable going forward, and if they are, then we will include them in the current year's efficiency schemes or when they become deliverable. I said I would speak a bit more about reserves, and there was a specific section within my report around that. So it talks about the creation of a general reserve of 1.459 million based on the underspend within the council services. Within the report, paragraph 3.11 proposes that we set up an earmarked reserve of 0.455 million to address known unfunded commitments within the care at home service in 26-27. So we have some commitments going forward within the care at home service that we commission through the council side of our business, and these are unfunded. So by setting up an earmarked reserve, that will help us to fund those in 26-27, and that's what I'm proposing that we do. The balance of the reserve will remain as a general reserve. And you may remember that we had an update on our reserves policy early in last financial year, which was approved in December, and that policy identified a prudent level of general reserves to be 2% of revenue budget. The general reserve that we're proposing to create as a result of this underspend would give us a general reserve of 0.4% of our revenue budget. So it's a step in the right direction in terms of building up a reserve that we will be able to, that would be available to offset any future year-end overspends. And we know, and we've discussed almost every time we meet about the challenges and the financial pressures that are coming in the coming 3 or 4 years that we've looked ahead. So it makes sense to set up this general reserve and to hold it for those purposes. In terms of the next section of the finance report, that focuses in on the updated funding letters that we received since the last IGB. So we had an update from our council partners in terms of the funding letter, which includes an additional 284,000 of funding that they have received from the Scottish Government, passed through to fund our adult social care services in terms of the real living wage. So that's welcomed and will be put towards the costs that we are going to incur in that area. We also received a final funding letter from our NHS partners, and that is attached as an appendix to the paper. Overall, this funding offer meets the Scottish Government parameters in that it is fair and it passes over all the funding that it should pass over that the NHS partner has received. And so I'm recommending that we accept that funding offer as part of this paper. The last section of the paper talks about an updated medium-term financial plan. It is very much at the levels that it has been in previous iterations. It just updates it for the 26-27 position, and still presents a challenging financial picture going forward based on the assumptions that we have in the plan at this point in time. And I will bring future iterations of the medium-term financial plan, and we'll look at scenario planning as well as we go further into this financial year. That's all I want to say just now, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. And I think we have identified a development session in the second half of the year to continue the work that we're doing around the longer term financial plan and to look at issues. So we look forward, maybe not the right word, but we welcome the opportunity to have further conversations around that. So we'll save those conversations for that development session. Let's open it up to any questions, comments, observations from Mike. Shameen?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mike, for the paper. And normally we're always looking at considerable overspend, so I want just to thank all the staff for the position that we're in. But one thing I just wanted to, it might be something we scrutinise a bit more at the development session is the set aside and what progress has been made around the rigour around that and being able to do things differently. And I know we've talked about working with Lothian, so it's really keen to delve in a bit deeper on that side. On the previous paper we talked about Michelle and Nick coming along, and I just wondered if that's what they would be covering. And I welcome the additional resource that's going in at care at home services, because they do a huge amount of support, especially for individuals that are coming out of hospital, but also preventing members of the local community that potentially could be going into hospital, but supporting them in the local community. So I welcome that resource going into care at home, and that as we move forward, if we're able to allocate more resources to care at home, because I think if we're talking about prevention here and now, that is, I see that on the ground as one of the biggest ways of supporting health services that are considerably challenged. And I welcome the fact that we've got an underspend, and I think that's as a result of the additional resource that was allocated to us. For example, from East Lothian Council of 3.3 million, that's helped us to be able to support us in the year ahead. So I'm really grateful for that additional support that we've received. It's made a difference to communities across East Lothian.
Mike, do you want to respond to that first, and then I'll bring John in?
Yeah, and just picking up on your last point, Shameen, you're absolutely right. We started 25-26 on a good footing based on the funding offers that we got from our partners, and I guess that shows that we, when we've got good base funding, we can manage our services well, and not necessarily always to an underspend situation, but certainly it gives us a good opportunity to manage our services going forward. In terms of the set aside, Michelle and Nick Bradbury will come and speak at some point to us about how that works from their perspective as well. And we have had discussions and will continue to have discussions with Mid Lothian around how we can jointly maybe try and make some impact on our service delivery in the community, and maybe shift some of the balance of care from the acute sector. But those discussions are very early stages, and there's a long way to go on them.
That's great. And maybe I could just pick up offline with you about the direct impact of care at home with this reserve being set aside. So that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly do that, but just to be clear, this is an existing commitment that we have. We're not spending the money on an additional care at home services. This is to fund care at home services that we currently deliver, that we don't have recurring funding for. So this will be set aside to try and address that.
Thanks, Mike. John.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I've got three things. Firstly, on the underspend from the council. I mean, we're in sort of a strange position here, aren't we? Because it's quite a good that we don't. It's a good thing on one hand, but we as a public service organisation do not spend everything we get budgeted. But on the other hand, the circumstances seem strange, and I think it's really important, Mike, that you and the officers do fully understand why we've got ourselves in this position at such short notice. It doesn't feel like good financial budgeting to be told so close to the year end, or after year end, that we've underspent, and we didn't think we would, by $1.5 million. And if it's only for a short period of time, in relation to staffing, as you rightly say, Mike, it's really important to understand the full year staffing effect. I mean, $1.5 million, if that's mainly staffing for a short period of time, is a very significant number of staff. And that's my concern, is here the opportunity cost, you put it that way, in terms of what have we not been able to do in the community, perhaps in social care, but we would have been if we actually had spent this money. And so it does worry me a little bit, whilst on one hand on the other hand, it is good to not fully spend our budget and to put a reserve aside. So I don't know, I'm kind of pausing for thought there and feeling it's hard to comment as an IGB member without really better understanding really why this has happened and what the consequences are. So that's my first point. I'll just quickly go to the other two, which might be more just procedural or just around the vagaries of how we set budgets, etc. For the health budget, Mike, and I'm sure I probably asked exactly the same question last year, we spent 159 million in the year 25-26, but our budget is 159 million, but we have agreed a budget of 132 with the health board, because that's in relation to recurring costs. So there's actually a 26 million deficit, if you want to call it that, which I know in theory is made up by the health board in relation to non-recurring income. But I guess as an IJB, it's probably remiss of us to not get some assurance from you or from the health board that we will actually not have to find efficiencies of 26 million, because that's technically what we are in a position to have to do. Otherwise, we are 26 million in deficit from day one for 26-27. Again, I'm pretty confident you asked I was asking exactly the same question last year, but I think it's important, maybe my view is that we record this and get some assurance somehow, but we haven't got to find 26 million in savings, because technically that is what we have to do right now if we are to spend the same amount of money as we did last year. So that's kind of a technicality around the peculiar carries of budgeting, I'm sure, and funding. And finally, just my final point is more of a philosophical question, perhaps, or technical one, around about setting aside the 455 for care at home as reserve. I guess it's a small amount, and I'm okay with that if you believe that's the right approach, Mike. It's just that philosophical approach of what does unfunded commitment mean? Because we have to make efficiencies and savings anyway for most of our services. So I don't know why this isn't a different category in the sense to any other efficiencies we need to find as an organisation and savings versus the budget. Maybe it's the council versus health. I'm thinking a bit wrong, but I just wanted to just clarify that point. What kind of, in the sense of what does an unfunded commitment really mean? And I think Shameen was asking a different question on the same subject. So that might be a bit technical, lack of technical knowledge for me. I don't have a problem with 500,000 as an allocated reserve if that's sensible. So that was probably a fairly minor question or comment. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John. So 3 questions there. David, your hand went up in terms of the forecasting and issues there. Do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, it was a response to the point about John in terms of the staffing underspend. So this was in many ways an unplanned underspend in terms of where we thought we were going to be. And it has arisen in a number of our areas, particularly around care at home from the internal services and care home. And we had planned to recruit into those vacancies for the exact reasons that John and Shameen have highlighted in terms of the impact on our residents and the demand for services. So I think there is a bit about, whilst from a financial governance perspective, having that underspend is one thing. I think the reality is we would prefer to have the staff to be able to deliver the services to meet the demands that were coming forward. And I think that will remain a challenge going forward in terms of that recruitment. I think what we have taken on board is that whilst we have plans to recruit into vacancies from a financial perspective and our forecasting, I think we are going to be more regularly checking that crossover between our recruitment and what's actually happening and our financial plan, so that we've got a better or more visible picture in terms of the correlation between the two, rather than saying we're planning to recruit, we're making sure that what we're actually saying is coming to fruition, because there is always an element of turnover, and we would want to have those staff in place to be able to deliver the care that has been identified and has been needed.
Mike, do you want to continue with responding to John's questions?
Yeah, sure. I suppose just taking them in order then, John, around and you're right to point out that the offer letter is lower than what we spent last year and lower than what we probably expect to spend in this financial year. And that's largely down to, well, it's entirely down to the earmarked funding that we get from Scottish Government. Now, to be fair, Scottish Government have tried to baseline, which means put into our base allocation, allocations that they've given us in the past on an annual basis. And they've done that to some extent, but not entirely. So we still will expect to get a number of allocations, and some of them substantial to NHS Lothian, that will then be shared across the IGBs from the Scottish Government on an annual basis. And the downside of that approach from the Scottish, or from our perspective, but not from the Scottish Government, is that they don't usually attract uplift. So that's why some of these allocations come in separately. They come in separately because they're still to be finalised and agreed in terms of the policy decisions around them. And often they don't, and usually they don't come with any uplift to them as well. So I expect that to continue. I can give my assurance at this point in time that I don't expect us to have a £26 million gap at the end of the financial year. I can't tell you at this stage exactly what the totality of these allocations will be. I can certainly go away and have a look at the types of allocations we're talking about and give you feedback on that if that's what you'd like. But it is the way in which the funding flows at this point in time. And remember, we only get allocations for the year that we're moving into as well. We don't get a 3 or 5 year framework of allocations, so we're still getting allocations for 1 year only. In terms of the 455 that we talked about, making an earmarked reserve, that just tries to align that element of the general reserve against the care at home spend. It's related to the unscheduled care funding process that we've gone through and the care at home review that we're undertaking at the moment in terms of the commitments that we've made. But my understanding is that these are not contract commitments or spot commitments. So whilst we want to and intend to continue with them, we don't have funding. In the last financial year, we were able to fund them from slippage in other parts of the business in terms of unscheduled care, so other parts of the care at home side of things. So we were able to cover that in 25-26. This will ensure that we can cover those costs going into 26-27. As the review of the care at home services and the wider care services that we've got in the community, it continues, and once that comes to conclusion, we will have a better understanding of the commitments that we require and the capacity that we have going forward, and whether or not we still have any gaps in that, and then how do we close that gap? How do we fund those gaps going forward? So it's to ensure that we continue the level of service that we've got as a minimum until we can get a better understanding of what we need to do going forward. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's good on that one. No, that's fine, Mike. I mean, and on the care at home reserve, I you know, for the 1.5 million underspend, that's just worries me in terms of, there's a feel. I know it's not our role here to get into the weeds of it and the operations, but it does worry me just if you prorata that across a full year, what level of staff we have not recruited, and that concerns me as an IJB member. If we really, it could be a very significant number of staff, and what's the cost to the community in terms of that level of a lack of staff. So to me, I kind of have that recurring kind of concern about that, and I think that's important that we, you know, for me, that we can understand that a little bit better and we can get a clear explanation. I still feel on the health board piece, Mike, I mean, the paper does not talk about the 26 million at all. The paper, it's as if it's just silent. I had to kind of work it out myself, that there's a 26 million gap there because it's not mentioned. It's as if if you read it, you'd think that we'd spent 132 and we're getting 132 plus 2%. So I feel we need to record this in some way and get assurance in some way around that 26 million. I don't feel, I understand what you're saying, that this is kind of, you know, sort of how it's done, and you know, we'll get some uplifts, but I just feel as an IJB member, and I think I just accepted it last year, to be honest with you, but that was the way things were done. But you know, as it stands, we spent 158 million last year, and we've currently got income from the health board agreed at 132. They're 26 million. So I don't really follow, and I'm interested in the other members in terms of their view of this. I feel as though we need something more than that. I think it'd be remiss of me not to ask for that. And if we turn around in a few months' time and say suddenly we're talking about a big gap, and the reason is because that non-recurrent funding has not come from Scottish Government, then I feel that we're not quite fulfilling our role as an IJB board. So I'm not trying to over egg it. I just feel that there's a gap there which concerns me for such a significant amount of money.
Mike, how would you propose to address the, because I think we all have those concerns, and I don't think it is just putting a little note in the finance papers. I think it maybe needs something more. So you don't have to answer that immediately now, but you need to go away and think about that and come back to us with how you would propose to give assurance to the IJB of the issues that John's raised. Unless you've got your thoughts now, and please share them if you do, Mike. And the other one, whilst you're thinking there, the forecasting, you know this, Mike, because we've had separate conversation. How assured are you, and I'll throw David and the rest of the leadership team, that the forecast position for the year that we're in now will not result in a significant swing at year end, either from the issues that John's raising, from are we getting best use of the money, or from the technical accounting that the forecasting's not very good. And because if the forecasting's not very good, it could have been 1.5 million the other way, which would have been a really challenging issue if it's about forecasting. So I'll let you cogitate and think around those. So initial thoughts, Mike?
In terms of the assurance, I will go away and come back with an answer, because it's not just the IGB. Obviously, it's NHS Lothian itself will get an indication of their baseline funding, which will not be at the level of what they were spending in previous years. And so we do need to come back with some assurance around that. In terms of the movement in the position, I think until we get a detailed understanding of where it's happened and what's exactly has driven it, which is what we've asked for, we can't say definitively if we think it's a potential recurring problem. I think from looking at it at a high level, it is multifactorial, and I did say that, and it could just be a kind of perfect storm in terms of the favourable outcomes of a number of things that happened at the end of the financial year. But as I say, we need to wait and see what comes out of the sort of detailed analysis of that, and then we can feed back if that's what's requested.
Sorry, can I just?
I think that would be helpful. Go on,
Andrew.
John.
Sorry, just something just skipped my mind, and just want to raise this. Just for future, not for now necessarily, but something for us to sort of think over in the months to come. When I joined the IJB, it was around the time when there was some what I describe as robust debate about the use of reserves and how they'd be allocated and split between health and the council, and with different views of IJB members. And so I guess, just to maybe just put it out there as we go forward and we are building up reserve, I prefer us not to have the similar issues going forward. It feels to be some sort of clear understanding, and maybe it's a governance piece, I don't know what it is, between the health and council side of things, a clear understanding of how reserves will be utilised in the future, because we are meant to be a collaborative board, which in theory that pot is there for the use of the community. And I think there were some differences in terms of how that was all approached last time around. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying I don't think we want to be in a position towards the end of the year where we're having where the council and health board might be disagreeing on the use of reserves. So I don't know whether that's something that just has to be left, but I just want to put it out there because now we're in a very fortunate position where we have got reserves again.
And we have an updated reserves policy that Mike has brought forward, and I thought this wasn't going to be an issue for us, and now it is. So we wait to see how the year progresses. David, you had your hand up a couple of times.
Yeah, I was just going to come back in terms of some of the assurance and whether, I can't remember the question was, do we have confidence in the forecasting position? And I think at a high level, I would say, having gone through and had the conversations that we've had with our finance colleagues, I think I do have that level of assurance. I think there is a little bit of work that we need to do to understand some of the nuance. But when we look at the reason that we've kind of got the level of underspend that we've got, so part of it was up until now, the council element of the IJB had been expecting to underspend, and we had reflected that as break even on a risk basis. And what we've seen is a number of movements that have been positive in the financial position that individually are relatively modest, and so are not out with the kind of realms of what we would expect, but it's the cumulative impact of those things that have come together to give us the position that we're in. So one of the things that we have said we will do with our finance colleagues is just look at how all of these different elements interplay with each other from a forecasting perspective to give us that overall assurance. Because I think a £1.4 million underspend is a better position than we thought we were going to be in. But I think we can actually explain the detail of what has caused that. And actually, when you look at it from a forecasting perspective, there is a degree of rational basis around all of that. So we just need to take it as that, as Mike says, as that total picture in terms of how we've got to where we are. But I don't think we've got a fundamental issue in terms of financial governance and forecasting.
Thank you, David. Elizabeth?
Thanks. David, I'm reassured by what you're saying there. Obviously, on the risk register, risk number 5486 is accurate financial forecasting, and there is a risk we don't get sufficient accurate financial forecasting from the systems in place. And at the moment, that is medium on the risk register. So obviously, that will be looked at by the Audit and Risk Committee at the next meeting. David, do you think that, David and Mike, we would be able to get quite a detailed presentation paper for the Audit and Risk Committee on this issue, so that when we consider that, we're fully informed? Thanks.
David or Mike to come back?
Yeah, I'm happy, and Mike can come back as well. But yeah, I think Elizabeth, happy to do that from that risk register perspective and the risk. I think part of that risk previously had related to some of the Adult Social Care Commission and stuff. and the kind of internal audit reports that we had and the processes that have been put in place to minimize some of the kind of risk and variation that we previously had seen around that. But I think happy to bring back through audit and risk just an update in terms of where we are, and the kind of any learning and reflection that we have from the year-end position that we've got.
Thank you.
Shameen?
Yeah, just to kind of listen to all the conversation, I think I'd be more reassured. I know you're saying that you're engaging with colleagues to get that reassurance, but I think we need more robust reassurance about that 26 million gap. So I support Jonathan when he was saying we need some kind of written confirmation from NHS Lothian, that gap will be made, because I think I've sat through IJB meetings before where it's been indicated to me that we've had conversations, something will happen, and as a result nothing has happened. So I think I've got to learn from that, just to make sure that we've got the right checks and balances and this process is robust, and we get written confirmation as an IJB that that's going to be the case, that gap will be met, because I think it'll be catastrophic for us in East Lothian to have a gap of that level and the impact on services. So I'd want that reassurance to have that. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be able to support that today.
I think Mike's already committed to do that, so it's just a re-emphasis, Shameen, of the important point there, and I think we've got to give Mike time to come back to work through how that's going to happen, and if you can get back to us as soon as you can on that, Mike, that will be much appreciated. Okay. I'm seeing no further hands, so there are a number of recommendations there. The majority are to note, but there is one agreement which is around the earmarked reserve. I am supportive of that. Can I just get a nod and thumbs up if people are content with that from other colleagues? I'm seeing that, so we acknowledge that. So, Mike, we accept the recommendations. There's some actions that have come out of the conversation, and I'm sure you'll come back to us. I mean, there's another meeting at the end of June, so I think there's opportunity there for you to come back and respond by that meeting. Okay. I'm seeing no more hands, so we'll draw that one to a close. We're nearly finished. I just want to make an observation, and it's for James. We do talk about service users and patients and services. It's been quite a dry meeting, this, but the majority of our meetings, we do focus on the services we provide rather than the infrastructure. But this one is just one of those from an agenda point of view that we've done lots of audit and risk and finance. That is not the normality of how the IJB focuses, and I'm sure that we, as we go through the rest of the year, we will talk much more about our service users and carers and families and patients and the staff who deliver the services. But it's been an important agenda because there was some important issues and papers to go through. I've got one other item of business as we come towards the end, which is I should have said this at the beginning, to welcome Fiona Curry back from her sojourn into election services, and on behalf of the IJB to note our thanks to Becky for the meetings that she stood in, and I will drop Becky a note on behalf of the IJB to thank for that. But Fiona, and also very welcome to have you back. So I will just take, are there any other business items people want to raise? No, so we will recognise that we have finished an IJB meeting in an hour and a half and 1 hour ahead of our schedule. So I suggest you use the rest of your afternoons productively. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Take care now.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ely,
Thank
can
you.
you switch off the
Cheers, bye.
recording, please?